Good morning. I want to begin by thanking all of you for coming out, as well as my friends, family behind me. And I also want to take a particular moment in order to thank Commissioner Kevin Wolf and his wife Sandy, quite frankly, who were somewhat of a catalyst in putting me on this road that I'm about to travel. He was very persuasive, and I will tell you that one of the things that he was most persuasive about is convincing me of the concern that he has for Bexar County and the citizens of Bexar County. So I want to thank you publicly, Kevin, and for all your efforts as well as your help in this campaign. I thought it appropriate that I'd start my comments by briefly sharing how it is that I come to be here in front of you today. And in order to understand that, I think, and I hope you'll allow me to explain why is it that I would run for a law enforcement office that is an elected position. In order to understand that, I think you have to understand what my background is, where I came from. So please indulge me for a moment. I have to go back to my early years where I think myself, and like many of you, I suspect that you were influenced by a lot of what was going on during the times as you were young folks in terms of beginning your careers. For me, at the time that I was in my early 20s, there were a lot of things going on in the 70s, whether it be Vietnam, Watergate, whatever you have. Some of them good, some of them not so good. I grew up in the New York metropolitan area, and I grew up in some not so nice places. That being said, I was still very, very blessed. And the reason I say that I was blessed was because I had a mother who very much cared for me and was basically the most significant adult influence in my life. I reflect on her often and privately because what she did as a single mother was raising an only child who in all likelihood didn't have much of an opportunity to make any type of success of himself given the circumstances that we were in, certainly as a young man. She struggled to do two things. She always wanted to make sure that her child was safe and cared for, and that he lived in a community that wasn't crime-ridden. Now, when I think about that, whether she was successful or not really doesn't matter to me. Because when I think of her, what I also realize about her is that what she did every single day was to try and make sure that she did the right thing on my behalf. Every single day, irrespective of where I lived, how much money we had, it was a good environment. Now, in contrast to that, and during the years where I was trying to figure out what it was that I was going to do with my life, I came to realize, like most of the general public, certainly in the communities that I was living in, is that I was put off by people who were always trying to get over on other people, to abuse other people, take advantage of other people. What I'm referring to is making victims of the young, the old, the less fortunate. I developed a very, very deep-rooted resentment of those who took advantage of unsuspecting or weak people. That's how I was built. That's how I was raised. Plainly stated, I became angry at what was going on. And I really got tired of being an observer. I got tired of standing on the sidelines, watching this unfold in the media or through friends, conversations, or what have you. And what really, really made me angry was that I recognized that I was an observer. Like most young people at that time, I really had limitations on what I knew about the world. I was young, I was to a great degree as naive as any youngster. But the one thing I did know is that if I was going to try and address that which concerned me in terms of some of the things that were going on around me, either personally or just as an observer in the community, I knew I had to become something, a part of something that was bigger, stronger, and better than I was as an individual than if I was going to actually make some type of contribution. That opportunity came to me in the late 70s when I had the privilege of becoming a special agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The reason I use the word privilege is because when you are given the public's trust, there is no better word to describe that. It is an absolute privilege. Let me share a little bit with you about my career. After leaving the FBI Training Academy in 1978, my first assignment, ironically, was down to the Mexican border here in the Rio Grande Valley. I was addressing organized crime, gangs, kidnappings, robberies. It was quite a mesh of criminal activity because back in those days, special agents of the FBI in particular were very much generalists and had to be a jack of all trades. That followed with being brought up here in 1979, and some of you may remember that the first federal district judge that ever was assassinated in this country, John H. Wood, was assassinated in 1979. Some of my colleagues who were senior investigators then assigned here to the San Antonio office are here, and I want to thank them today for being here. Within a year, I was transferred after that to New York City, where I was involved in national security investigations. Years later, I was promoted in 1992 into the ranks of management, where I was brought back to Washington, D.C., and I was detailed to the Drug Enforcement Administration and the Pentagon. Following that, I became the agent in charge, Corpus Christi, Texas office. After that, I went back to Washington, and I was managing a group called the Crisis Response Unit. Crisis Response Unit was a tactical team of people that traveled the world in order to provide secure communications capabilities to our investigators that were handling events like, you might remember the USS Cole being attacked in Yemen, or when in the continental United States when we were looking for Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and he was holed up in the woods of Montana. This was a group that would go out and provide technical support to the investigators that were involved in those investigations. Following that, I became an assistant special agent in charge in Tucson, Arizona, where I was responsible for all of the investigative matters in southern Arizona. In 2003, I was selected to become an inspector in the FBI. As an inspector and personal representative of the director, I led a team that was responsible for going into FBI field offices around the country and around the world in order to check on whether or not they were doing what they're supposed to be doing operationally and administratively. In other words, were they in compliance? This particular assignment was one that taught me very, very quickly how a leader has to be postured in order to identify fraud, waste, and abuse. And equally important was that I got to see some very innovative people in utilizing some very limited resources on behalf of the taxpayer in a very responsible way. In 2004, I had the privilege of being named the special agent in charge of El Paso's field office. And that was followed in 2005 when I came back to San Antonio and enjoyed that same privilege here as the special agent in charge of the FBI office. The 33 years of FBI service, experience, and training, to include the time I spent as an FBI executive manager, is my foundation for pursuing the position of Bexar County Sheriff. You're not going to find a candidate who has more regard for the human element of the work that we do. And when I talk about the human element, I'm talking about the victims, I'm talking about the citizens, and I'm talking about the employees. Additionally, you're not going to find a candidate who has a better understanding of the subtleties of being a leader and having that role in the law enforcement community. I know how to ensure successful interaction with federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. I know how to hold people accountable when they're given the public's trust. I know how to pursue and provide employees the resources that give them the greatest opportunity for success on behalf of the citizens that they serve. Most significantly, I know how to find out what's most important to the citizens of Bexar County regarding their concerns. As a senior executive, I have successfully managed million-dollar budgets, crafted strategic plans, which were intended to identify and project future needs and responsibilities of a law enforcement organization. As an FBI senior executive, I was specifically measured by FBI headquarters and the Department of Justice back in Washington. And that's a euphemism for telling you that I had a job to do, and if I didn't do that job correctly, they would have removed me quicker than I could eat a breakfast taco. Make no mistake about it. I also know how to develop and foster a positive working relationship with the governmental organization that facilitates funding for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. If you're not working in partnership with the mechanism that funds you, then you cannot be as successful as you should be. So who suffers? The taxpayer, the citizen. Due to 9/11, I just spent the last 10 years of my career participating in the overall change and the restructuring of the FBI on behalf of the American people. What I learned from that experience, absolutely necessary to being a successful leader, is you have to remain open to change. You cannot fall and become mired in that stagnation of business as usual. And no matter how painful or challenging it is to conform to change, it has to take place if you want to maintain a relevancy on behalf of the folks that you serve. As Bexar County Sheriff, I want you to allow me to review the culture of the organization, its operational and administrative practices, the protocols that it uses to determine if the Sheriff's Office is serving you, the Bexar County community, responsibly. Right now, the office is mired in fiscal deficiencies and inadequate resources. I'm prepared to make fundamental changes to ensure the Sheriff's Office is not only protecting and serving Bexar County today, but that it be postured to protect the citizens of Bexar County in the future, for the years to come. I will ensure that the safety of the taxpayer, the law enforcement officer, and those assigned to the jail is the first consideration when applying resources. Secondly, and also important, I'll make decisions that are disciplined and fiscally responsible as I honor the trust of the citizens of Bexar County. I don't think I'm alone in this, but I believe that there's a future for Bexar County that's a very, very positive one going forward. I believe we can be reasonably safe while still being fiscally responsible. Achieving safety and fiscal responsibility requires a lot of work, and maintaining that takes even more work. I'm prepared to achieve these goals, but I can't do it without your support. I had a very successful FBI career. The foundation of that was my mother demonstrating that she had regard for me and her expectation that I carry that forward. That's how I've spent my adult life. I also never really enjoyed any significant measure of success where I did not have a lot of people helping me. I don't care what kind of success I had as an executive manager, as a journeyman investigator. It never came because I did something by myself. It always came because people like yourselves were good enough to extend a helping hand, to support me do my job on your behalf. So as I stand in front of you today and announce my candidacy for the position of Bexar County Sheriff, I ask for your support, I ask for your vote, and maybe just a little bit of your money. Thank you very much for coming out here today. Thank you.